So next thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk about services, right? So remember, service is something that runs in a background, is always on, and when you start it, and it basically just keeps cranking in there and does something. So let's look at in our case what we have. Actually, we'll look at the life cycle later. But let's look at in our case what we have. So in our case, we have this guy. So we said we want a service that's going to be pulling from Twitter every so often, right? And then it's going to store that data in a database eventually. So far, so good. That's what we want to do. So to do that, we're going to start by creating a service. Okay. So how do you think we create a service? You've never done it, obviously. So what do you think would be the steps? Yeah, file new, and then what do we? So XML and Java. Yeah, that's correct. So I mean, you guys are kind of getting it. But in case of a service, we're not really augmenting it with XML. I don't think of, in case of activity, we had a layout for a UI. So here we don't really have anything that comes to mind. So we're going to start by saying file new. So let me close all this stuff. So we're going to start by saying file new class, but make sure you do it inside that your package is selected. So new class. And then I'll call it updater service. Right? So make sure this is selected, and make sure that you type in this. Finish. So far, so good? So, just like before, what do we need to do once we have a class? Exactly. We extend something from the framework, and in the case of activity, it's activity. In case of service, it's service. And then organize import. And then it's going to say, service is a common name, so it's saying, whoa, 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 time out. Which service? Android service, Bluetooth service, Java security service. What do you think? Yeah, it's going to be the Android service. So, and then it's saying, okay, how, it says, this is underlined red. You put the mouse there. It says, okay, you got to implement some methods. And whenever it says you got to implement some methods, pretty much you always say add unimplemented methods. Yeah, so now there's this method on bind, which for now you're going to ignore for a very long time. We don't care about it. So intent. Yes, so there's something called a binder, which is used for inter-process communication, IPC, which we'll talk about later on. But it's not really. It's something that's really advanced, and you don't really care about it.
Oh, this is service to service.
This is if somebody else wants to bind to this service on an ongoing basis. And it's usually used via AIDL for inter-process communication. So it's another application, another process talking to this process altogether, which is not something we're doing right now. So for now, we're going to ignore this, and we're going to do something else instead, right? So if you look at what we had here on a life cycle of a service, I said, there's on create, on start, and on destroy. Those are the basic three things, right? So we can do. We're going to do this slowly. So I'm just going to create these three methods: on create, start, and destroy. I'm just going to print a little logcat so that I know it happened. And then we're going to see how that works. So we're going to do this like in small increments, right? So I'm going to go source, override implement methods, and then on create, on destroy, and on start. We don't really need on start. If you want, we can take. If you want to keep it simpler, we can take it out. What do you guys want to do?
What is the difference in
Let's
on-start
see.
and on-start commands?
There should be some purpose behind.
Yeah, but we can. So let me. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move it just so it's in chronological order. So it's on create, on start, and then on destroy, right? So I have it like that: on create, on start, on destroy. What were you saying? Sorry.
There's another on-start command.
Yeah, there's different. Yeah, there's different methods. They do different things. You know, just as before, if uncertain, you can always do service, and app service, and that tells you, you know, various things. There are different ways to use a service, but the way we're using it, is one of the simpler ways initially. So on create, on start, and start command on destroy, so you know, that kind of stuff. So anyway, so what we're gonna do is I usually always have that private static final string tag, you know, and is, you know, updater service dot class dot get simple name, or simply updater service, right? Same thing. So I usually define that guy all the time, just because I'm assuming I'm going to be logging, especially with things like service, which you can't see. It's very useful to watch them by having them tell you what they're doing, right? Because you can't see them. They're invisible, like electricity, sort of. Okay, so in on create, I'm simply gonna for now say log.d tag comma on created. That tells me that it's at the end of the file. Organize import, import log, and then I'm gonna do that log.d tag comma on started and log.d on destroyed. So I just basically added that one liner, the little tag, just to say, you know, hey, you know, there's something going on. That's it. So far, so good. So to create a service, you know, you define a service, you subclass system, you create a new class, subclass, system class, and then implement some methods. Same as an activity, right? You know, we have a service now. It doesn't do much. It's perfect, right? We want to do this organically, incremental, right? Like create a little gear. You know, it spins. It doesn't do much, but let's see it spin first before we plug in other gears, right?
They should add this to manifest.
Exactly. So the next step, just like with the activity, is to put it into a manifest file. So all the main building blocks, you got to put them in. Usually, you put them in the manifest file. There's an exception to that, but we'll get there later. So I'll open up the manifest file, and I can simply just do it like programmatically. So I can go into my manifest file and can simply do within the application block. I can say service Android name equals dot updater service. And that's it. I'm done. If you want, you can make this shorter. It's not necessary. Same here. You can make this shorter, right? Like that. So see, I mean, we have an application. It's got three things now: one activity, second activity, and one service.
So whatever component you add, like one is with reference to whatever it is, they all come between this application tag.
Yes. Yes. So all the main building blocks go into the application tag. Yeah. So they're all part of the Yamba application. They all have access to Yamba application, etc. So far, so good. Okay. So now that we have the service defined here, what I want to do is I want to integrate it back into my application. What I mean by that is I'd like to be able to see it start, stop, and that sort of stuff. Constant integration, right? It's another one of the agile principles, right? Constantly integrated back. So how would we integrate it? One simple way that I could do it is we already have the options menu, so we could just easily add two more things to the menu. Say start, stop, right? So that would be a good easy way. Okay, so we're gonna go back to our menu. So we want to add two more things. So which file was that we defined? The buttons. Yeah, menu.xml, and it's going to be basically the same thing you did yesterday. You're going to add another item, not a group, but item, and I'm going to say item service start. Right, item service start. Create a title for it. For title, I'll create a new string. I'll say string title service start service, right? Then the hardest thing is going to be finding the image. Which image to use, which graphic to use. Okay, I'll help you guys out with that. I'll go find it for you while you're doing that, because I like poking around the internet anyway. So I go to that site called Android Drawable.
Isn't there like a start stop in regular Android that you can use? Stop service, start service on regular service.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, there is, but we got to figure out which image to use. And there's something called that I usually use before, IC Media Play and IC Media Pause. These two. So I use these two icons. Again, it's up to you. You can go crazy with those icons, but they're good enough, right? So I'm going to say here then add for Android column drawable to point to the system resource and then IC Media Play. Right? So this is how I configure, added one button. So far, so good. So,
Mark,
yeah.
what time will be breaking for lunch? Around 12:30?
Yeah, 12:15 for lunch, something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we're and it's good because what we're doing now is going to be small increments, so it's not going to be like one big push to get something out. We're going to grow this organically. Okay, so everyone got this new item, right? You just got to do the same one again, right? Just be careful. One thing I notice people get stuck with Eclipse. See, now I wanna create a new item, and I go click add, bam. It's like, whoa, there's no item, there's a sub menu. That's because contextually I have this selected. So that's, it's like just kind of Eclipse is not very intuitive about that. So make sure you create a new element to the top, and then select item, because that's what you want. You want 3 items. You don't want sub menus and crazy stuff like that, right?
If I create a menu, can I use CPD?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? At the end of the day, this is XML. Just open it up in Notepad
I
and
know, because the delete on the GUI didn't work.
Yeah, I may or may not.
I don't
Yeah.
Yeah. So service stop. Title is gonna be new title. Bam, bam. So title service stop. Stop service. Bam, bam. And then icon was Android drawable / IC media pause. And ultimately, I can show you guys all of them like this, right? So that's what I created at the end of the day. That's what menu looks like. Hmm? I use a IC media pause. There's no real stop icon. I didn't find it when I looked for it back in the day. I looked for it. I don't know what it stands for, but it's icon. Yeah, it could be. Yeah. Yeah, I see the icon. They have S's for I think status. So they have the stuff that goes well into the top, the notifications, the images that go well into the menu, and so on and so on. So they're sized properly for those purposes. So now that we have this defined, I can already run it and reinstall the app, and we should see the menu come up, right? It's not going to do much, but see if I click on menu, just by merely updating the menu XML, just by click on menu, and there are 3 things, right? See, 1, 2, 3, and you can click on stuff. It doesn't do anything because we don't have a way to handle it, but at least it shows up, right? Okay, so everyone got that so far?
So it's the order that we define in XML that it shows up?
Yeah, exactly. So it's So we have preferences and then start stuff. Yeah. Okay. So how do we now do something when it's clicked? Hmm? Yeah. Which file?
The services. Status activity after the service file, right?
Well, remember, status activity is where we handle the button clicks.
Yeah. What about the service items? We already have
Yeah.
to switch there. Update the service
Yeah, so that's the actual service we're going to be starting. But the question was, where do we handle the button clicks? You know.
file. Just add to activity.
Yeah, so we remember on options item selected, and we actually went out of our way yesterday to put switch statement, although we only had one button back then, so we really didn't need it. But it comes really handy now because I can really easily add support for the other 2. So case r.id dot and then item service start, bam, do something and break, and then case r.id dot then service stop, do something and break. You might have noticed how now we already have like a few IDs, right? So it's useful that they're named in a certain way. That's what I was trying to point out yesterday.
Refuse to die keeps drawing.
Yeah, exactly. That's really helpful. So the question is, what do we do if we want to start a service, stop a service? Yeah, it's going to be an intent. So we're going to be creating an intent. It's going to be very similar to this, right? And the way we're going to send an intent is going to be similar to this. So as opposed to start service, it's going to be start activity. It's going to be start service, right? So you can do start service for an intent. So new intent from this to that. So updater service dot class.
Dot start?
Huh?
You have to say dot start or
No.
it just knows because it starts service?
Yeah. And then stop service is the same thing.
don't see the on option item select from the program.
You don't see which one?
On option item select.
On option item selected.
Yeah, from the program.
So yeah, I'll take a look at that. But that's the one that we added yesterday when we. Yeah. So did anybody try to run this? And does work? Okay. So yeah. So if I run this now, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna watch it on my Logcat, which I always. You guys notice I have my Logcat always on, always running, right? And same as with the emulator. So it's much quicker that way to develop. So I can basically just watch what's going on. Actually, I need my menu button. So menu, right? Start service, and bam, there's my notification. Start stop, right? And then I can say menu, stop service, and there's my. It got destroyed, right?
So how come all your three menu objects came in one row, but for me it came in two rows? What's the deal with that? Who defines those?
These three things.
Yeah, but maybe I give longer strings. I mean, I understand like that's
Yeah, so
maybe I give longer strings. But
yeah, the system is gonna decide how to position them given the space.
okay.
You can group them. That's what the sub menu is. Yeah, so you can group them or group them as well.
I think there's another option too to say whether the words come to the side of the like vertical, like the icon of the words. I think there's something.
Yeah. Well, there's also a condensed version. So if you have a long name, you can have a long and a short name, and then if there's a real estate, it's going to use the long name. If not, it's going to use the short one. So you can kind of configure it. But let's try this. What if I start a service? So there's created, started, but now I start it again. So I already have it started. I'm going to start it again. Notice that create happens again. So here we had create start. Sorry, and this is start. So in other words, create is only created once, but start is started every single time you say start, start, start. So that kind of gives you an idea what it is. But like somebody pointed out, they are singletons. So there's only one instance of this service. You can't start 5 updater services.
So essentially, it was already started, right?
Yes, it was already started.
Went through the stub and checked if it's
Yeah.
started. That's all.
Yeah, exactly.
It really started. Didn't do anything.
Yeah, exactly. And now if I do stop, I stop it, and if I do stop again, it doesn't do anything because it's already stopped. Right? So that's basically what I wanted to point out. So we now have a very basic service that doesn't do much. Right? It's just a service. It just starts and it's running. And notice this. Look, if I go now and say start, bam, so it started. Let's go to our settings, right? Application, running services, and you can actually see that the service is indeed running. It's there. It's running, always on, always running. Right? I can now stop it. Look, if I click on it and say stop, notice that actually stopped the service. Settings, application, running services. Right, so that's what the service is. So just something that's now sitting there in the background, not doing much. What's that?
I cannot see a start service, stop service.
You guys are not seeing the actual log. So are you logging? Are you logging to the right log? I mean, do you have? If it's one of the two things. I mean, either this is never actually being executed, right, or something.
You worked before. I mean, in activity, so update activity. I remember I used in the local I can see on console.
Okay, let me see. Yeah, so every once in a while ADB is going to lose a thing. So what you can do, the easiest is to do ADB kill server, right? And that kills the server. And in the meantime, Eclipse is going to start like doing this, like blah, 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 trying to reconnect, and so on. But then you saw ADB start server, and that basically reboots your connection between your device and your emulator. So now Eclipse is happy. You may have to that always on, always running Logcat is not so much of is running anymore because we killed the connection. So that's easy. You just do ADB lock yet again, bam, and we're back in business.
So it's failed to start daemon.
Yeah, then that's a different problem. I'll look into that. But so far, are you guys looking into, is this making sense to everyone in terms of what the services are, how they started? Now, our services started, it doesn't do anything at all. So our next step is going to get it to loop, and after that, we're going to get it to do something else, to pull data from Twitter and so on. Okay? But now let's do, we're at 12:15, so that's when you typically do lunch. So lunchtime, good? Okay, so let's do until 1:15. Okay, so what we did before lunch is we basically said we're doing this service, that's what we're working on, right? And the job of the service is going to be to periodically go and pull something online, right? So it's going to pull some data in, and it's going to then do something with that data. So we now know how to start it, we know how to stop it, but we saw that that running, right? So that was our bubble. We could start and stop it, right? Start and stop service. So if I start it, I can verify that indeed it's running. I can see it starting, and then if I stop it, I can see that indeed it stopped. Okay, there. So now what I would like to do next is I would like to have something run periodically. Okay, so how would you do this? This is a Java question. How would you have something just run periodically? Timer, you could use timer,
Have a scheduler.
scheduler, cron job. Right. You can also do, you can just simply do a thread and then say thread.sleep, right?
So Android doesn't have something similar to like, I mean, thread.sleep would work, thread would work and then you go to sleep. But then they have something along the line of a timer queue that you could just register to say wake me up every 10 milliseconds or whatever.
There is something called the alarm service.
Right.
Yes, you could do alarm service and use that to wake you up every so often. That would be a different way of doing it.
Right.
So yeah.
One is more efficient or more preferred than the other?
The reason why alarm service may be better is that you can then schedule a whole bunch of other things to happen at the same time, such as network calls. So in terms of the battery performance, you would want something to hit to hit the network at the same time. So let's take a look at that really quickly. So service, so alarm manager is what gives you access to that, and basically the way you use it is by so set repeating, right? So you can schedule a repeating alarm, right? And you can basically have it send intent back to you. But this is, it introduces a whole bunch of new stuff. So that's why I don't typically use this. I just go with the regular thread at this point. But that would be an alternative way of implementing it.
Alarm manager also.
There's an alarm manager, is one of the system services, which we haven't talked about yet. But we'll talk about it at some point. We're going to look into pending intents and stuff later on. But for now, let's just do a simple thread. So to schedule something that would run every so often, I would simply I'm going to create a new thread, okay? And then I'm going to, with the run method, and then I'm going to start a thread, have it sleep for some amount of time, and then do the job and then sleep and so on, right? So here's what it's going to look. So I'm going to create a class updater. So there's going to be, updater thread, right? So extends thread, right? And it must provide the run method, right? So inside of the thread, I need to provide the run method. And there's my run method, right? So Yeah, this is again an inner class. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's an inner class. It's a class within a class, right? Since it's only private to this thing, right? It only makes sense within this context. So in here, for now, what I'm gonna do in run, I'm gonna simply do something like I'll say log.d tag comma and then updater run link, something like that. Right? And then after that, I'm just gonna say sleep. So I'll say this dot sleep for some amount of time, and we can create some kind of constant that's gonna be our constant amount of time, whatever that is. So I'll say we can come up with something. So so I'll say static final long delay, and it's a number of milliseconds. So let's say we're running for now I'll do 30,000 milliseconds, which is 30 seconds, but later on we're going to change it into something that is a little longer, just so that we can see if it's working for now, right? We could also make this configurable. I'm sorry? Yes.
Configurable from where again?
Well, later on, I mean, at some point we could evolve it to be configurable via the preferences, right? Right, so you can specify how often you would like to do it. So I need to surround. I basically need to add surround with try catch block here, because this can be interrupted, right? Because at some point maybe we just shut down. Maybe we're like interrupted. We're done with the sleep, right?
So is this determined? The unit is set?
It's in milliseconds. Yeah. So it's thread.sleep because it's a static method, so we can just as well do it like this. Yeah. So we could do this. Yeah, exactly. So now now that we are running, right? We're running something, and then we're gonna sleep, right? Ideally, we would want this to happen over and over again, right? So yes, you're right. So I can put this in an infinite loop. So surround with while true, right? So this would be an infinite loop, and so on. So that basically means we were sleeping. We said sleep for 10 seconds, but 5 seconds in, somebody woke us up. That's like whoa! I was in the middle of a sleep. That's an exception, right? Right, so I'll say do something, sleep, and then here we're interrupted. So that's basically what's going on. Okay, so far so good. So now the question is when do we create this? How do we start it? How do we stop it? We just define it here, right? Do you guys got it? Everyone kind of got it. You save it, compiles. Anybody has any errors or anything like that? Saves, compiles. Okay. So now if I define, I'm going to define it globally to our service. So I'll say private updater, right? And then in onCreate, I'm going to create it. So I'm going to say updater is new updater. Right, so that creates a new object. And then in start, I could start it. I could say updater.start. That starts it, right? And then on destroy, I would do the opposite. So I'll say updater.stop, right? Or interrupt, even.
What happened if it's already started?
Hmm?
What happened if the thread is already started?
If the thread is already started, and you start it again? I don't know. That's an interesting...
This could happen, right?
Yes, yeah. So let's see. That's why we have everything we can test with. So if I run it, so menu, start, so started, see it's running, right? What happens if I say menu, start again? There's an exception, right? Yeah, thread already started. So, you know, I mean, what I could do is I could...
There's some flags, right?
Yes. Yeah, so we could do both things. We could consolidate start on create and on start into on create, right? That's one way. Second way is we could create a flag, and we're gonna need this flag anyway. So I'm gonna make it create a public boolean is running, right? And by default it's false, right? Right, and so what I'm going to do is on updater start, I'll say is dot is, but I'll check. I'll say if it's not running, then we're going to do this, right? Make sense? So I'll start the updater. And here I can do the same thing. If this is running, we're gonna stop it. On destroy and on start stop.
No. Yeah, and then if you call it multiple times, you can still pick it up again and start twice.
Right. So this should be synchronized. Synchronized. So that means that only one, that basically makes this method a critical section. It means that only one thing can be in this method at one time, because you don't want accidentally. It's really it's hard to reproduce, but potentially we could have one thread be here, then another thread be here, and then one is changing it to true, but the other one is just checking it right before this one checked. Yeah, exactly. It's a possible error. Yeah.
So you made both start and destroy synchronized.
Yes. So if I go menu, start, create, it started running. Menu start again, nothing. Menu stop, Unsupported operation. That's because I need to interrupt it first, right? So it's not thread.
Not destroy. Thread dot destroy.
Is it thread dot destroy or thread dot interrupt? You gotta do thread dot.
You destroy. Why won't you destroy?
I think you need to interrupt it first, right? I think you need to interrupt it first, but I'm not sure. Let me see.
Anything where you found that you smell it?
Just a flag.
I mean, you need to set a flag so it breaks out of the line. If you have one.
Yeah.
You can't interrupt or stop or stop. Something
Yeah. So it's not going to be while true. It's going to be while it's running. Yeah. Exactly. So that's where it is. So then we can basically say while updater service is. What is it? Is running.
Then in the catch block, we should probably set it to false.
Right. Yes. So start. Create running. Starting running. Start again. It's fine. Stop. Destroyed it. Stop. Nothing. So let me just to test it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make the time period much smaller. I'll make it 3 seconds as opposed to 30 seconds. Okay. So let's do this. Okay. So menu, start. So it run. So menu, start again. Nothing. Running. It's still 3 seconds. It's not 1.5 seconds, right? In other words, we don't have 2 started. Then if I do stop, it stopped, right? And we should actually probably set it to null as well when we clean up. So when we do destroy, updater is null, right? To help garbage collector.
Won't it automatically get 9? No, is it? Or do you have explicitly?
That helps the garbage collector. Yeah. And so now, if the responsibility for is running is in this guy, now that I think about it, we could also make this a property of the thread itself, not the property of service, right? And I could make
What I'm thinking is with the Android itself serial, because when you make a user intent to request, like let's say start, stop, and that kind of thing, right? With the Android itself, put those messages in a queue and serialize those requests to the service. Like I said, oh, the service is already running, so somebody else has to create it, so I don't have to create it, so instead I just gotta go to start. So way you don't have to worry about other synchronization stuff. That's, to me, a lot of people get tripped up with and synchronous concurrent stuff do trip up a lot of people. So
Yeah.
I think they would want to make it easy for people by serializing those intent requests. But they can do it, right?
Yeah, but the intents,
That's
yeah.
going to.
Yeah, the intents are going to be synchronized. So because in other words, serialized. So they're going to
Yeah,
happen.
serialized.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Okay. So did you guys get something to work periodically? So if you do menu start, let me clean up, do menu start, do you get it like running every so often?
Try to upgrade those SDK tools.
Yeah, okay, so that's a different question. So what we've done is we just moved basically this variable here. We're checking, we're starting it, setting it to true when run kicks off. While is running, we do that, right? In case we are interrupted, we make it into false, right? And we have an accessor method that returns is running. So far, so good? Questions, comments?
Maybe the stop service is not again minus stop service. There's no help that you can.
So what do you mean by stop service?
For some reason it's asking you stop that and stop the ADB, stop execution restart.
Oh, you're talking about something else. Okay. Okay, so one thing I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna give this thread a name by saying public updater. This is not important, but super, and then I'm gonna give it a name updater. This is just gonna basically give it a name. And what I mean by a name, like what do we care about the name of the thread? Here's what I want to do. Remember our status activity, I still have that start stop debug tracing. Yeah? I'm gonna enable it just for a short, just to demonstrate something. You guys don't have to do this. So I'm gonna enable it. I need to organize my imports because that debug was missing. Bam, run it. And so let's see what happens. Okay, so hello with a service. I'm gonna, this is super slow now. I'm gonna click on update. Okay, so this is updating, got Twitter, blah, 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 posting, done. Okay, updated. I'm gonna now click on update service. I'm gonna start it. I'm gonna let it run for a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times or something. I'm gonna click menu stop service. Okay, and now I'm gonna click home so that I stop the actual generation of the file, right? So what I'm gonna do next is I'm going to go to my desktop, right? I'm gonna do ADB pull. So ADB pull as the card yamba trace, right, dot, there it is, and I'm gonna do trace view yamba trace, and let's see what we got. Okay, so here's a couple of things I want to show you. So notice that we have a hell of a lot of threads, right? A whole bunch of threads. Binder threads you can ignore. We don't really control them right now, nor the heap thread, right? But this is our UI thread, important, right? This is the main, also known as the main thread. Okay, that's the one that we do not want to block, right? This is our updater thread. This is our updater thread. This is what runs updates from the Twitter, and this is all our post to Twitter thread, async task. Remember? Right? See, I changed the name of the thread. That's what it shows. That's the only reason why I wanted to change the name of the thread. Right? So if I zoom in here, for example, okay. So notice that this is the async task. This is what the async task is connecting online and doing the update. See, so this stuff here is the actual work of going to the online service and attempting to post. But it's not blocking the UI thread, and it's also checking back on the UI thread every so often. That's why we have the little, you know, yeah, cuts. Yeah, exactly. So our status activity is going to be responsive. Okay. So for you guys get that? We already saw that, right? Now what I want to zoom in is this area here, where we run the something on a separate thread. So see this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those 6 things should correspond to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Destroy it.
Yeah, let's try. Possibly, I don't know exactly, but we can take a look. You know, so these are, you can see 3-second intervals, right? As a matter of fact, we can kind of time it, right? So see, this should be maybe not be exactly 3 seconds. This is 15 seconds. This is 15.4. I'm not sure, but if I zoom in any of these, zoom in, right? You can clearly see that this was print. So there's log print native, right? So this is the log part, right? What is this? This is a thread.sleep, VM thread.sleep, thread sleep, Yamba updater run, right? Sleep, right? So you can tell that that is the actual job of this is the run method, right? And so we have that. We have those like everywhere, right? So that is kind of connected, right? And so, got it? So that's what I wanted to show you. So that is indeed running on a separate thread. So it's not blocking our UI thread. So far, so good. Normally, before when I used to teach this class, what I would do is I would let it. I would forget about this whole other thread. We would actually do it, and then we would be like, wow, why is it running so slow? I would actually create a problem and actually show you how it's slow, and then we would go and fix it. But this time, but I used to use something called handler and looper. So I would basically post a message on a handler. There's so many ways to do this, right? So, but I found that to be a little harder to explain. So this is a little easier usually because it's old stuff, especially if you know Java, should be easier. So anyway. That is the little thing that I wanted to show you. So I'm gonna comment this out again, so that I'm not stuck with the terms of organize import save. Okay. Oh, I just made a constructor here. Yeah. I think you can do that in async task. I'm not so sure actually, but. If I did it, so public post to Twitter. I don't know if async task supports that, but super post to Twitter. Maybe not.
You have multiple ASINs, multiple of those, and how do you
Yeah, there probably is a way. I just don't know off the top of my head, so not sure.
I see that on this
In here, so on this Troy basically checks if it's running and then interrupts. Okay. So far so good. So now that we have this, by the way, if you're on a guestnet, you can just access my computer directly, right? Now that we have this guy working, right? It's spinning. It does something all the time, right? What is that it should do? Well, the next thing that it should do, it should pull from Twitter, right? So what do we need to do that?
User preference.
We need a Twitter, right? So this do something. So we're gonna do something here, right? So we need to connect to Twitter and get the data. Okay. So we know how to get the Twitter, right? That's gonna be, and you pointed out we can do get application context, right? Sorry, get application dot get. Well, I need to still cast it.
Application context is still canceled.
Huh?
Application context, but you canceled, so always not.
Yamba application. So you're saying get application context? Oh, and then I don't need to do. Yeah, that gives me Yamba. All right. So I can get Twitter from there, right? But how is that helping me? That's the same as get application, right?
The get application returns the application.
Well, get application returns the application, get application context returns the context, but this gives me.
Oh, you remember the other thing we introduced, the status activity that is that.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, yeah. So that's a different thing. So okay, so back to the yeah. So you're saying as opposed to doing all this, right? I could have said get application,
Context. Or
I can just do a get application because it is an inner class, but it's really property of activity. So that's why, yeah, this may simplifies it a little bit, right? Because it's kind of just being explicit. Get application hangs. See, right now you're not sure where get application comes from. It really comes from the activity. So what I said is go out there and then reach in, right? But in this case we can do it shorter, just like this, which is implicitly, since it's in inner class to the status activity, it will work as well. So sure, sometimes there's something to be said for shorter. So I'll leave it like that. Okay. So this will get us Twitter. That's not a problem, right? This is going to figure out how to log in and all that mumbo jumbo, right? Get username, password, server, whatever. So we already have that framework infrastructure, right? Now the question is, how do we get data from Twitter, right? So let's take a look. We have no idea. So let's look at JTwitter library. And there it is. And they have, you were asking how do we look at Java docs. So they have their own Java docs somewhere here. There it is. And we would look at Twitter and try to figure out what's available. And there are all these different things that you can do to Twitter. So you can befriend, you can break friendship. I love that. You can destroy. Can you destroy a friend? No, you can't. You can destroy a message. You can follow. You can stalk, right?
Can you explain the
Okay. So do you know what Java Doc is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so they just published their Java doc, and the library we're using is JTwitter. So if you go to your favorite search engine, whatever it is, and you say JTwitter, right? It comes. It's gonna probably be. You can click on I feel lucky if your search engine is Google, and then inside of here they happen to publish their Java doc. If they didn't publish their Java doc, you could just Java doc on their jar file and get it, right? So, but this just tends to be used quicker. So anyway, that's how I got to Java doc. It lists everything. Since we are getting the Twitter here, right? You know, I would click on Twitter to start there to see. You know, you can read the documentation, but we're lazy. So follow, get date, get direct messages, get favorites, get followers, get friend IDs, get friends, get home, timeline, blah blah. So this is the one that I typically use. Get friends timeline. Returns the 20 most recent statuses posted in the 24 hours from me and my friends. That's what it says. Right? So that sounds very familiar, very similar to what we are seeing here. Public timeline. So me and my friends, basically. So do I have any friends? Shai is my friend. You know, so that's people who got who invited themselves, right? So if you guys go invite yourself, become friend, that is our universe, right? So you know, that is just as good as anything else. And see, Eclipse knows about JTwitter, so I didn't even have to read the Java doc. I could just do dot, and you can be like, I want to break friendship. No, I want to get friend. Yeah, I do want to get friends. How do I get friends? It'd be interesting if you could specify criteria as well. They gotta be like thin and beautiful and so on. Okay, we really want to get the timeline. Where is it? Get friends timeline. Phew. Let me break this down into 2 lines so it's not hella confusing to you. So Twitter is that, right? And now I'm doing Twitter dot get friends, right? So far so good. Now, what do I do? So this returns, if you put your mouse on it, it tells you what the documentation, it returns a list of statuses, right? So this is actually a good example of generics. You were asking about generics yesterday. So I'm going to create a list of statuses, and I'll call it statuses. That's what I get back, okay? Now, when I do Control-Shift-O to organize my imports, a status is an overloaded word. Like there's like so many things in my class path that have the name status. It says which one, right? So is it async status? Is it SSL engine status? Is it Wi-Fi status? Or is it Twitter status? It's Twitter status, right? So I'm going to import it. So far so good? Okay. So we got our body's statuses. What do we do? What do we want to do next? Yeah, but we're doing things incrementally. So for now, let's just print it out. Let's just log D it, right? Right? We're doing this in a small increments. Sounds good? Okay. So are you guys familiar with the for each loop? Right? So for status in statuses. Right? This is the Java 5 for each loop that allows you to really quickly to iterate over all statuses. Now I have a status and I can do something. And let's just say I'm going to print name in status, like sort of like Joe said this, right? Make sense? Just like sort of I want to get it like this. This is Joe and this is what they said, right? So let's do log the tag comma string format, and my format is going to be simply %s column space %s, right? And then status dot. So let's see what we got available in status. Now I can look at it via Eclipse, or I can flip over, go into documentation and look at Twitter status and see what the heck Twitter status says. And here's what we got in terms of Twitter statuses. So when it's created, the ID, in reply to, retweet count, source, text, and user. Right? Yeah. So we don't. I'm not gonna care about retweets. I mean, you guys can do that as extra bonus. You know, whatever. I don't really care about that. So sources, for example, if it's posted on via the web, via mobile, you know. So it's that little thing that says when you look at it here. Hold on. When you look at it here, see it says from JTwitterlib, from JTwitterlib. They're all from JTwitterlib, right? Make sense? Yeah, that's what the source is. So that's the source. So, but we really care about user and text. However, user is, so text is easy, it's just a string. But user, we further need to look at user, and user is a whole bunch of stuff. Following, followers, friend count, name, display name. So that's probably what we want. Make sense? So I'm gonna do status.user.name, comma, status.text. Anybody tried it?
Yeah.
Worked?
Yeah.
Woohoo!
The description for the application is different than the one for the application context.
Okay,
So
let's
so
take a
I
look at
use
that.
The one for context and that one. So I don't know, but get application.
Okay, we'll take a look at that. So if I let me see, I'm gonna clean this up, and I'm gonna say menu start service, bam. So getting tweets, bam. Here the list. Okay. 3 seconds later, bam. Get the list again. 3 seconds later, bam. Gets list again. So the point is, don't do it every 3 seconds because it's gonna be hella annoying. This is where Twitter shut me down, and like. Because, you know, we do it every 30 seconds times 10 people, you get like a lot of traffic all from the same user ID and IP address and all that. So they shut me down first, then I moved to Identica, so they shut me down next. And now I'm hosted at, you know, status.net. So when they shut me down, then I'll have to, you know, think of something else. So in the meantime, I'm gonna simply change that hard-coded number to 60,000. So that's a minute. Okay. So far so good on everything, on all this? Okay. So we are, in that case, pretty much done with our service for now. Okay. We have a service, so we have this guy, just gonna recap. We have this guy, we can start it and stop it by pressing some buttons here, right? We can start it and stop it. It leverages our infrastructure, so it knows how to get Twitter, how to get preferences, all that jazz, right? And that kind of dovetails into your how do we share data. So it's obviously sharing the data with the rest of the platform, right? It knows how to pull data from Twitter, and it runs periodically. Every so often wakes up, does the run, wakes up, does the run, and so on. And we verify that it does it on a secondary auxiliary thread, so as such it should not be blocking anything else, okay? So that's all nice and dandy. So we're pretty much done with that. Now, next job is going to be to stick that into the database, and so that later on we can read it from the database. Okay.
The updating menu, that you have the buttons for starting service and stopping service, right? That is like UI, right? And
Yes.
this get friends timeline or whatever is like the networking part.
Yes.
So aren't you mixing again in the same? I mean, we are having both in the same class, right? The updater service is doing both, handling both. The pressing buttons part as well as.
No, it's not. No, it's not. When you press a button here, you're pressing that button in this guy here. This guy is basically firing an intent to the system. So imagine that this is the upper echelon of Android. It's like this is where the gods are, right? And it sends the message there. Then gods decide to call on, create on, start on a service, which that spawns a separate thread which actually does the pulling from Twitter.
Or we just have on create and on under the update service, but not the actual UI. We just have the implementation of on create on this one and those methods in update service. The actual UI part is handled by status activity.
Yeah, the button is handled by the status activity, yes. Yeah, so the button is loaded by status activity. So status activity loads the button, right? So it has the menu. Where's the
The case statement.
yeah, create. So this creates the menu. This handles the menu. So this is what's actually processing the clicks. So yes, the UI processes the clicks, but then it fires off an intent, right? And that brings back the picture that I had yesterday that I kind of explained some of the stuff to you guys. And the picture was called loopers. Dong, dong. So it looked like that. So basically, as something happens, as UI event happens, we just put a message on the queue. So that looper then says, oh, this message is for activity. Oh, this message is for service. So that's kind of that upper echelon of Android, right? That figures out how to disperse messages, right? You do this, you do that. But they're different guys. Service is now going to the cloud, to Twitter, and connecting. Activity is just handling user presses. Yeah.